All right, so we are on the air, and we'll kind of hang out here a sec as people join in, but maybe in like 1 minute, go for it. Um, let's see, questions and stuff.
Yeah, is there anything I should have ready?
Well, if you're interested, you're totally welcome. I don't know if you had a chance to check out the show before, but and
Better mute that.
did you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Oops. Yeah, I'd like to pull that page up just in case people ask questions on the YouTube page, and I can hop back and forth. So, what was I going to ask? Oh yeah, so if totally up to you, but if you have like a curveball style question, I don't know if you had a chance to check out the show before, but basically,
I listened to one of the podcasts, and I was trying to figure out what the curveball exactly was. I guess I didn't understand it from that very podcast. I'm like, I don't really know what the curveball was meant to be.
it's honestly, it's a question. It's like if you were writing into the show, what would you ask, kind of thing. It's and no big deal. It's like it's a little warm up question, not a biggie. I've got one ready, so
Okay.
all right, totally cool. Um, do.
Am I supposed to have one for you?
No, you totally don't
Oh,
have to.
okay.
Typically, we'll just do one curveball and then jump in.
Gotcha.
And I can throw this curveball at myself if you want. So either way. But I whatever. That's
Maybe we could both answer it.
good. Good. All right. Let's see. So we've got viewers coming in and stuff. That's awesome. I'm just all set here.
Is there any like live chatting going on that I should be aware of?
There's that YouTube link, and then there's also the event page. It's kind of funky as far as how many ways Google Plus gives people abilities to interact with shows, and we tend to not like flip all the switches on and do everything because
Oh, okay. It's
it's
just
kind
too
of a
much. Yeah.
yeah, it's just too much. And not that we don't like the participation, it's just, well, we also want to stay in this conversation, and that's the thing we emphasize typically. It's not that we'll totally shut out the audience or what have you. It's that sometimes it just doesn't always work, or sometimes it's kind of pulls you out of the conversation. So um, it's all good. I will take a peek at it, and we'll work it in if it makes sense.
Okay.
All right, cool. Are you ready to go?
I'm going to mute. Here we go. I pulled up the YouTube page and I'm going to mute things, and
Mm,
my computer is so slow. Okay, yes.
cool. All right. Well, here we go. This is the Lean Into Artcast. I'm your host, Rob Stenzinger, and my co-host normally is Jersey Droz, but he is out and about, roaming the world, spreading the word of his current comic, and which is super awesome. And we actually have a guest with us today, and by us, I mean it's just me and a guest. Special guest Don Griffin, who is a comic artist and professional illustrator, and we're going to be exploring the topic of being a webcomic jack of all trades, and that's going to be a ton of fun. Welcome, Don.
Hi, how's it going?
Really, really good. So it's so cool to have you here and to have a chance to chat again. Um, what um, what we often do with this show is, well, when we have a guest, I mean, we're going to just kind of go wherever we need to go. But sometimes when we have a topic, we'll frame it up where we'll talk about things in the kind of the high level and think about some theory and stuff. And that's like our 10,000 foot up range of the podcast. And then we dive in and try to get some helpy tips and practical things that you can take away. But before we do all that, let's take some more time and chat with Dawn and welcome her and say if you haven't had a chance to check out Dawn's work, she's got a lot of incredible things out there, because not only is she a professional illustrator and a webcomic artist, right? So you can check out, like, she's got this awesome portfolio at dawngriffinstudios.com. She has tons of comics at zfcomics.com, and illustrates a book series called Abby's Adventures, which is like a lot of positive messages to promote self-esteem in young girls. Awesome stories that actually I read to my daughters, and yeah, and just all around, like, as she calls herself, like a both a jack of all trades and then like a creative workhorse, which is evident because not only that, Dawn, my word, you also do a podcast and help do a lot of community help outreach stuff to your fellow webcomic artists with the webcomicsalliance.com. My gosh, Dawn.
You exhausted me, and that's me that you're talking about. Yeah, and I'm always thinking, like, I'm not doing enough. I need to do more of this and more of that. And yeah, it sounds like a lot.
It's a lot. That's yeah, you're doing a lot with. I mean, and you'll do, like, you post helpful articles on the webcomicsalliance.com, and of course the podcast that you do with your co-hosts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's anyway, that's so it's pretty, it's pretty awesome to and appropriate to have you here, where we're going to talk about just different angles on the whole, like, web comics and how that leads to being a jack of all trades and stuff. But, like, wait a minute, there's something else new that's going on that I saw you tweet earlier, where you're doing like a signal boost. Like,
yep, I was going to have it as a surprise. I wasn't sure if you heard about it or not, but
I've actually kickstarted already.
Yay! Okay. Do you want me to go into my spiel about that right now, or?
Please do. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm a contributing artist for what is called Rise, Comics Against Bullying, and it's this. I've had to keep this under wraps for about 6 months. So, a bunch of artists came together with a bunch of writers. Many of them pretty well known, and some of them more aspiring, up and coming type of people, and putting together this great anthology that's all about the positive outlook on the bullied kids. So it's I don't mean to make it sound like it's positive for bullying. Obviously, it's not. But it's just, instead of being kind of like, oh, all these kids are being bullied, how sad, it's kind of a positive spin on what kids can do in a positive light to fight against bullying. So it just has a good tone to it, is, I guess, my point.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, that topic could be pretty dark, right? But
sure, yes.
Obviously,
I think they wanted to focus on the good side of overcoming it, as opposed to how bad it is. You don't want to depress people; you want to uplift people, and that's kind of the idea. Cool. And the good thing is what they wanted to do with this is not just make an anthology to sell. What they wanted to be able to do is give it away free to kids. So they have a publisher signed on to the deal. But because they're basically saying we want to make a book that we give away for free, we need to fund it somehow. So that's where Kickstarter comes in. And then we have a lot of great organizations that signed on to distribute it, like GLAAD and Prism Comics, and there's a lot of great things about this. And hopefully it gets funded. It's already beyond 20%, let's say 25% now, and has basically a month to go.
Wow. That is super awesome, and that's obviously it's an important topic, and a lot of times that I mean, obviously people in the arts community, I think a lot of people can empathize, even if they weren't necessarily someone who went through that kind of experience. Being an artist is all about trying to get into different perspectives and empathize and tell tales, and especially the idea of overcoming difficulty and whatnot. So I don't know. I'm excited to see the sort of the output of that series, and I think it'd be awesome as anyone who's listening to this, I would imagine you would have a vested interest to go check out that Kickstarter and consider supporting it.
Yes, please do.
That is so cool, and I'm glad we had a chance to check that out. But like, so before we jump into the curveball, Don, I got listed so many things that you do. Like, what's how do you like to, when you hand your business card off to someone, you've got so many things to possibly say. Like, what do you typically cover?
I mean, it depends on who I'm handing it to. If there's someone who also does a comic or at a Comic-Con, I'm usually just a cartoonist. Will usually cover it. It kind of says what type of comic I do, and it has more of that aspect to it. But if I'm say I'm at a craft fair, because I do Comic-Cons, but I also do things like craft fairs, art festivals, things like that. And there I might say illustrator. And they usually tend to get that, But it always depends on who you're talking to, and if someone might need, design work as well. I'm a graphic designer, and so it. But I mean, generally speaking, like creative workhorse kind of covers it.
So that hence the drive behind the title, creative workhorse. That honestly, that's a pretty awesome term.
I'm not even sure if it's like a technical, if it really exists. I know I heard somebody use it at some point, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. Like, I just don't stop, I'm just like, the minute I have a minute to myself, like just spare time, I'm like, I'm slacking on something, so I think that's just my personality.
Well, yeah, and obviously you can, workhorse. It's a matter of like pulling through any kind of creative difficulty almost. Seriously, that's a pretty great term. So what do you think? I'm wondering if you'd be open to me tossing a curveball out at you. Nothing too crazy, but something that before we jump into our topic, let's warm up a little bit. What do you say?
That's fine. I'm all ears.
So I was wondering if I don't know if you have run into this, but like, let's say you're working toward a deadline, and you have like one of your critical tools is either somehow unavailable or broken, something that it requires is missing, whatever the case, it's out of commission. You have one of your critical things that you're using to produce your work, yet a deadline's coming up, and you can't use that thing. Have you run into that kind of situation before? And
I think
how was that?
I mean, right now I'm totally digital, so it would be my poor old tablet dying finally, and I have had circumstances where the hard drive was going, and but I can always fall back on my traditional roots. If I needed to, I could draw it with pencil, actual pencil, and use ink and pen and ink, and sometimes I do go back to that once in a while. But I think it's a good thing that I have other options where, as opposed to if you were traditional and like you lost use of your hand or something, you'd be kind of screwed.
Fair enough. This could go pretty far along that kind of situation. And then I mean, I suppose that right. I had not considered that aspect. I was thinking more on the side of like, well, I'm out of ink, cracked screen on a digital device, what have you, right?
I took it way off to the side. Yeah, but I get you.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. It's interesting that a lot of times when you're making some kind of visual product, the fact that you have this history of natural media behind you, and it's not like natural media has evaporated since there are digital options. They coexist. So I mean, I guess it's kind of easy to switch to pivot. Is that but you have that's nothing that's come up before, what have you?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something that I had a major deadline that wasn't someone I was working for that I could have been like, hey, can you give me an extra 2 days? I have to get this, like, let me fix my computer and then I'll send it to you. I think I just lucked out in that respect. But there have been times where I've had to go back to use my Mac for something because I was having problems with my PC. The tablet I use is a PC, and
It's so funny. Like we have some, I guess a lot of us. I mean, it's almost like we have a like an overabundance of like fallback options because I mean that's a good point. I mean a lot of us, if you've been doing this long enough, chances are you may have like an old computer around as well that might.
yeah, and
You
I
know,
do have a very old Mac.
that's kind of cool. So there's well, awesome. I guess yeah. Maybe it wasn't much of a curveball. It was a little bit of softball, but it's but I think it's good to think about like the kind of the backup plans and whatnot too.
No, I think just in general, even if it's not like technology or tool, but you should always have a plan B, a lot of people go into art school thinking I'm going to be a cartoonist when I get out, and that's what I'm going to do. And I had a plan B, and I think that is very important. I know a lot of people that thought they were going to be illustrators, and now they work at Wawa. And Wawa is a convenience store for those who don't know that in my area. But I just realized that I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. It's not national. It's basically 7-Eleven, but nicer. But I mean, I think just in general, having a plan B and knowing that your favorite fallback or your favorite first choice could suddenly not be there, and what would you do after that? But
it's that's a topic that ever since ever since my wife and I started having kids, that there's been so many different constraints as far as being creative, like having a baby asleep in one arm and then drawing anyway, and what could I do in that circumstance or whatever, and it's like I can't depend on going to my office and always being in a specific lighting and in a all these certain pieces all perfectly aligned to then allow me to produce. It's just a matter of, well, how can I produce in this different situation? So I do like to think about that from time to time, like and maybe that's like
being flexible.
Yeah, the flexible and like you said, the plan Bs, I guess, and sometimes C, D, E, and F and G, but yeah, fallbacks.
I think that's another reason I have the tablet that I have, is that I like the portability of it. I could take it wherever I want to go, and I can sketch, ink, color, add the text wherever I want. So there have been times where maybe I'm needed at my parents' house or my sister's house or something like that, and they need me there for something, and I need to finish this thing, so I can go there and say, I'm going to bring my tablet with me, and I could still get whatever I need done. And at this point, I'm too spoiled by it that my next computer will have to be a tablet. And actually, that's a bit of a hint towards my next Alliance article. Will be breaking down some of the major portable tablets on the market. I remember cool. you had a mod book, right?
I did, and I miss it dearly because of what you're.
Oh no! What happened to it?
I sold it, and to replace it, I actually picked up a Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1.
Oh.
And it's really good, but it's not like what you were describing as far as how you use your tablet. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's effectively a portable studio, which right. Yeah. I mean, it can fulfill so many roles. Whereas the Samsung Galaxy Note, it's like it can technically fulfill quite a few roles. I can work in vector, I can work in bitmaps, I can use layers and whatnot, but it's not the full desktop class software that I've become accustomed to. Like I can't run Manga Studio on it. And
and that would be definitely a need for me. Would be that's why people ask me, why don't you just use an iPad? I'm like, iPad, you can't put Adobe on. Like that's what I need. I need Illustrator. I have my way of working. So yeah, I mean, I definitely have my favorite things. And if I didn't have that, it would take a lot of adjusting. But I know I can do it if I have to. But yeah, I mean, I would. That's what I'm looking at things that would be a full standalone, regular Windows or Mac OS that you could work on it. So, but I wish there was something with Mac that wasn't a mod book and outrageously expensive.
Yeah, and nowadays the mod books you can go sort of super old school and get pretty much the same model that I had, and thankfully I was able to sell and not and I actually had a little bit of a profit after buying a Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1, but like that's a lot of money to pay for a very old piece of technology, and then your other option is like this. I think it's like $4,000,
Yeah. Yeah,
which.
$4,000 is about how much a mod book costs right now. It's just like,
Mm,
oh, if I can't fathom that, like, especially with, probably going to have a new car soon too. So it's just one thing after another.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's not like right. I mean, the tablet is not actually a dwelling nor a vehicle. So yeah, $4,000, little bit steep. Totally.
Just a little bit.
So okay, yeah, that is cool, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Worth mentioning too is that Jersey Droz shared on I think it was last episode. No, it was the episode where we talked about Manga Studio. So it was 2 episodes ago about how he's currently using a Windows Surface.
That's one of the ones I want to review. The two that seem to be kind of people are trying to pit against each other and figure out which is better is the Surface Pro, maybe 2 or 3,
Mm.
and there's a difference between 2 or 3. So that's kind of a whole thing, but or the Wacom Companion is the other one that a lot of people are talking about.
Ooh.
The one that is a standalone, because they actually have one that's kind of like I think it still hooks up to your computer, but the Companion, I believe, is like a standalone um, computer that you can install software on and everything. So.
Yeah, that's an intriguing product. So I can't wait. So are you're going to actually like are you going to have a chance to get hands on with it or?
I've
Or
used the one I've used is the Surface Pro 2, I believe. I used and someone else it was just had it with him and he was like, oh, I tried using this. You had to buy the right pen for it. You can't go with the pen they give you.
mm,
And I sat there in Illustrator and drew just like I would, on my current setup. And I was like, oh, this is pretty much the same. It didn't feel that much different. But I have not used the Companion yet. But what I'm going to be doing is looking at a lot of YouTube videos and just gathering a lot of, there's a lot of discussions on social media right now about these two products. So
mm.
kind of gathering information from each of those and, doing like a pro and con list is basically for myself too, because I'm going to choose one of these as my next hardware that I'll be using. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't wait. That's going to be an excellent resource. So cool. I'll be. I think a lot of us will be keeping an eye out for that. So
I'll
because
probably still be undecided at the end of the article too. I still don't know what the hell I want.
that's funny. Okay, fair enough. But the realm of the tablet, it's tough to deny. Like once you've had a desktop class
Mhm.
tablet, it's you have a taste of the full portable studio.
Yeah,
So
I can't. Yeah, at this point, I can never go back to being chained to a desk. So.
all right, that's kind of magical. But okay. So what do you say we jump into our main topic,
Okay.
being a webcomic jack of all trades. And what's funny is like normally, well, hey, I mean, inviting a woman on as a guest, I wouldn't actually. I would actually sit there and puzzle and try to come up with. I guess I would maybe use the word polymath instead, right? Where to replace jack of all trades, since it sounds so, it's kind of well, it's a masculine term. And
I
anyway,
never even thought about it. It's just it just becomes such standard that I didn't even think of it. You know what I mean?
oh, totally, yeah, and well, a lot of and in English, a lot of us, we're always using the pronoun he when we're really meaning everybody and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Some
But
Jill of all trades.
sure, Jack and Jill, sure. Um, well, and I mean, as talking about when we're just in your introduction, um, what's what sort of when you're talking about being a jack of all trades, what are some of the things um like why would you use that term to describe what you do?
Because I think it doesn't limit me. I mean, pretty basic, you know. It's a I'm not just an illustrator. I'm not just a designer. I'm not just a cartoonist. So, you know, I think that it opens things up. And the thing is, I don't want to just be one thing. You know, and I went to school for graphic design, knowing that that would probably be a big part of my life, and it's actually been very helpful for doing my illustration work and my um, you know, my comics and everything else, because knowing those programs, you know, really benefits me. So it all kind of feeds into each other. And if I ever reach a point where it's like, yeah, I'm really not feeling this, then I'll know what my limits are, you know, in terms of what I'm drawing or what I'm getting into. And, you know, I know that for instance, I know that I tried doing a more adult um, comic strip. I tried writing some. These never saw the light of day outside of my studio, but I tried doing something that was edgier and pushed the limits. And I actually was trying to submit to a contest with Playboy.
Mm.
And so I was trying to do something that was kind of raunchy and like goofy, you know. And I'm just like, wow, this is just, it's not in my forte, you know, and I'm not, you know, you hang out with me, you know, I'm not a prude at all. You know, I could be a swearing sailor at times, so it's not that aspect. It's just when I'm drawing and when I'm in that mode, that's just not what I'm capable of, um, without it being forced. So, you know, you have to try things sometimes before you realize that this doesn't work for me. So, Playboy, no. Comic strips, yes.
That's a really cool thing to point out too, because like you may have the variety of skills, but that doesn't necessarily mean the like every audience, like a Jill of all audiences or a Jill of all trades or what have you. Two different things, right? Um,
Sure.
that's super. That is interesting. So you end up. I mean, I suppose so. Like as you've gathered and tried so like enough things, and I ask this. I mean, a lot of us, well, on the podcast and people we have interviewed, it's a little bit of a theme with the Lean Into Art community. Is this the idea of? I mean, we typically don't just do one thing. Even when we
Sure.
only put one thing on our business card, we still don't actually do just one thing. There's typically so much as far as being able to share that capability and make it relevant to some audience. Probably, and even then, not probably all audiences. No, that's super handy as a distinction. So, I'm
I,
wondering,
I
like,
think some of it is.
no,
I'm sorry.
no, please don't, please go.
Okay. I think something that I was basically the Webcomic Alliance people have helped me, helped each other see. It's when you start off, you might be just doing your own comic, and that might be your brand for a while, is your comic, you know. But as you start to expand and do other things, you start seeing the brand that you have for yourself, and that's why when I finally took my portfolio to the next level, I decided to rebrand everything and became Don Griffin Studios. And most everything that I do that falls into my portfolio is in this brand that I've created for myself. And I know where my limits are. Like I said, you know, comics for Playboy probably aren't going to wind up in my portfolio. But you know, like I have this brand, and so when it comes to illustration, it comes to you know, comics, I really stay within the family-friendly, quirky, goofy, cute type of realm. And you know, I can dance around the edges a little bit, but I know I just have to keep it within there. And even if it gets a little bit older, like maybe it's a preteen audience, would still have a good message, which would tie back into the whole family-friendly thing. So I mean, you know, there's a way that you could stay within your brand but still branch out, but have enough ties back into what makes you you. And that was something I learned in college, in terms of illustration, is you kind of had to create your style so that whether it's the message or the look of it, just the aesthetics of it, you just know that you know that's a Rob Stenzinger, that's a Dawn Griffin. You just know it, that they had a hand in that. So I think that's important. That was a big thing in illustration class, was find your style and stick to it, but still learn how to grow within that style. So that all ties in.
Yeah, it totally does. And I'm trying to just wrap my head around that process where, so it's like you're using different skills and capabilities, but then you're also like finding this theme kind of thing that then ties you or connects you with a particular audience or set of interests. It sounds like.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and so was that were you sort of in that zone naturally, and then probing the edges helped you solidify it, or did you end up moving into that zone as far as where, like, by making your stuff and sharing it? I guess which kind of came first, sort of thing.
Um, hmm. I wouldn't really say it was something that happened like this definitely happened first and then that happened. I think I kind of started finding that, and then once I got my portfolio started, I basically mapped those edges out more clearly for myself, and knowing where I could go, and everything could fall under this umbrella brand. And but I think along the way I knew it. Like I knew it going into it, what felt right and what doesn't feel right. But sometimes you have to kind of push yourself as an artist to do something new. And like, for instance, I'm so used to doing comic strips. It's always been my favorite thing, the favorite format, the pacing. But for this bullying comic anthology, I did full-page comic book style art, which was really fun to expand, but it still stayed within my realm of family-friendly, goofy, quirky fun. But, now it's a full-size comic book. So that's a way to grow out of what you're used to doing, but still stay within the limits that you set for yourself. So you're not completely all over the map and very confused. You still have kind of a professional outlook to your work.
And as you were, so it sounds like this, like how recently did you go through that sort of rebranding effort or brand update?
About a year ago.
About a year
ago. I had a portfolio. It was done in Flash, for God's sake. And I had that online for a while, and it was fine. That's what I learned in college was Flash, so that's all I knew. But in terms of here's a way that my webcomic ended up fueling my professional portfolio side was in learning WordPress. I learned some CSS. I learned a lot about how to make a website that's not Flash-based, essentially. And so because of that, I was able to make a new portfolio using WordPress and a theme and all the stuff tied in. And I'm like, okay, so like I said, it kind of feeds itself. You do one thing, it's going to feed something else that you do. There have been plenty of things with my webcomic that has actually helped what I do at the office. There might be little things I learn along the way that I can show other people. I was the first one in my office to use InDesign, for instance, because I learned InDesign to make my book for my comics. So now I'm doing InDesign, and everyone else is like, I don't want to learn that, But it's handy because now I know how to do it. Now we're making bigger brochures at my office. I can pull from something that I learned from my comic strip into that. So I like when everything ties in together.
That is kind of awesome. It sounds like that there's things that you developed to to help make products for your webcomic that ended up becoming services in other areas as well. And is InDesign like the only example, or were there even other things that came out of that?
Like an animated GIF, I learned how to do that. And that was something I did at my office and kind of said, well, we could try this instead for like an email blast or something. I could do an animated GIF, and little things will come into play. I think InDesign was one of the biggest things, but
it's like there really is like. What did you think as far as when you were embarking on getting Zorfbert and Fred off the ground, and did you could you foresee like, oh, there really is like a pile of new things to figure out, or did that just kind of did that happen along the way?
Well,
Because I'm wondering, it's like, is a jail of all trades like just is that like just so tempting because it is there's so many things to possibly learn and you know apply to your different work, or is it yeah, I don't know.
sometimes when you embark on something that will be a journey, a big journey.
Mm.
When you first start out doing it, you don't really see that journey in front of you yet. You just kind of fall into the journey. You're like, oh crap, I guess I'm on a journey. Now, do I want to continue going, or do I want to, like, go back because this is scary new territory? So I think when it came to when I started Zorf, Bert, and Fred, that's kind of what it was like. Because when I first started it, I was still going to, the whole point was to draw up enough comics to be able to send out to syndicates and get into newspapers. That's where my head was still at. I had no idea about anything with the webcomics, like this is about the 2006. I didn't even know these things existed. Like, I knew people might post their comics online, but I didn't know people made like a living off of it, or even any money at all, So I was still kind of like, well, newspaper is my only outlet, right? That's where I have to go. And again, I went on to my Flash portfolio site and was posting new comics on there, so I had something to point to, saying, if you want to read more, go here. Well, that was a pain in the ass. So, because it's Flash. So I ended up looking around, like, I bet you there's some place on this internet thingy that has an easy way to upload comics, and that's where I stumbled on Drunk Duck. I'm like, okay, cool, it's free. I like free. So I signed up and I started posting my comics. I had no idea that people would actually go and read them there. I just thought it was like, good, now I have a link to send people to. And 2 weeks after I started posting all the comics, someone from Drunk Duck decided to feature my comic on their site. So I guess they do, like, once a week they'll feature one comic or something like that back then. So all of a sudden, all this traffic hit my page, and I'm getting, like, overloaded with comments, and people are interested and they're reading, and I'm like, holy crap, what the hell happened? So that was, that kind of sprung me into this journey of, like, what is all this about? And the whole goal of creating comics is to share it with other people. And, that's what I like about it. It'd be nice to earn the money with it too. But with the internet and Drunk Duck and posting online and these communities, I got to skip the middleman and share my comic with people. And then now the tricky part is, how do I earn money off of it so I can make it a living, or at least, something valid enough to keep it going. If you need more than just sharing it with people, if you want to feel like, you're making a profit off of it and putting all these hours into it, not seeing your husband and, things like that, it validates it for me a bit.
It's almost like if webcomics had like a warning label on it.
Yeah.
I wonder if as many people, almost like if the Surgeon General said, hey, wait a minute, doing webcomics is going to cause a lot of frustrated significant others, and a lack of vitamin D, and and anyway, would as many people jump into it, because it really is, there are so many unknowns, and but it's almost like how you're describing that, the adventure that you embark on and the kind of things that come up, and how you're adapting. It's almost like a combination of a playground and a training ground to for a couple of things. Like another theme that kind of comes up on the Lean into Artcast is like, well, you may be making your art for the expression, or you may be making it for the service, which oftentimes the service has to do with, finding it needs. Is what you're making some kind of viable product that someone will engage in trade with you for, right? So will they consume your ads, or will they be buying your products and stuff? And I wonder that sort of situation. It's almost like it's maybe webcomics artists. Tell me if this sounds crazy, Don. Where maybe webcomic artists are kind of wired like people who it's like a gene, maybe it's kind of like that that kind of need for that sort of challenging puzzle and figuring out how you're going to make a trade of your art, just like people who want to stand in front of a crowd and rock out, right? It's and
Right.
they just kind of need to do that. So it's almost like I would guess most webcomic artists that stick with it are, they may have the Jill of all trades gene, if you will.
Hmm. I think for me it's a trifecta. There's three parts of it that I need all three to work simultaneously
Mhm.
for me to feel completely fulfilled. I need to be able to actually draw it and actually write it, the whole creation process. I also need other people to read it and enjoy it, and be able to share it with people. And then I also need a way to monetize it, and that ties it in together. Now the
Hmm.
third part can wait. The first two are pretty fulfilling, and the third part just makes it even the more fulfilling, because of all the time that it takes away from everything else in my life. That if I'm bringing in some money for it, it makes me feel a little bit more um, like my time's worthwhile for it. You know what I mean? Especially in these rough economic times, and it's nice to have it out, a little extra money in case the heater breaks. So.
Yeah, it's and I would say that when doing things that are based on your creative voice as the one of the primary fuels or elements of it, and then to be earning the trade with it, that's um, it's pretty rewarding. And uh, I mean, that's the version of the webcomics, rock star. You're rocking out, people show up, they're sharing it, and they're buying stuff, and then and you get to eat and have a house, what have you, right?
Mhm.
That's so it's interesting. So that it's it's like that. So the trifecta, it's like a combination of forces giving giving you reason to keep doing the thing. Um,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and like I said, you pull one of those things outside of it. If I wasn't actually drawing it and creating it myself, I was selling somebody else's stuff. That wouldn't really work for me. And if I was just, if I didn't get to interact with the people who actually read it, that would be another missing link to it. If I just drew it, sent it to a publisher, and they sent it out, and people were buying it, like, yeah, I have the money, but I don't have the interaction or knowing that people are reading it and enjoying it.
mhm.
So, I think that, like, it's all three that make it the most fulfilling for me.
um, One thing I've noticed, so so the audience aspect and getting the feedback and doing the trade, and is that part of the fuel behind how you do so many appearances? So it would seem to me, who I don't do that many or what have you, but like it seems like you have like a pretty aggressive schedule or um, robust schedule, right? Is
Yes.
how how did that come to be?
Well, it's kind of a perfect storm because where I live, there are just so many that I can drive to. And the fact that I don't have kids, you know, um, and it those two things are just so important into being able to do that. And anybody who has kids, or I know where you live, there's not a ton, that you could just jump in the car, drive 2 hours to get to, no problem.
Right.
And but they're where I am, they're just popping up all over, big ones, little ones. It's insane. And so that, I mean, that's obviously part of it. But the draw that keeps me going is the instant sharing, obviously the instant being able to connect with people that read it, and being paid for my work, which is everyone likes that. But it's also the networking and seeing people who are like me, and I've made a lot of friends. I met you the first time at Baltimore Comic Con,
Sure.
and a lot of people that I've met, I've stayed in touch with, and there's just it sounds really cliche and cheesy, but when it comes to cartoonists, it's like an instant connection, and I can't really describe it. I mean, you might have talked to them online here or there, but you meet in person and it's just like instantly connected. Like you just, I don't know what it is about it, and like I said, it sounds cheesy, but
No, it's
I
not at all. Like that's
bumping
that's
into
the
people that like that, and that it's like that high that I keep going back. And like right now, New York Comic Con is going on, and last year I went, and this year I said no, it's too much, it's too expensive, it's too stressful. But I'm still going up there tomorrow night to go hang out with the people that I always see there. I'm just not going to be anywhere near those crowds. Thank God. So.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, I've heard that it's kind of intense as far as just the mass of people and all that, and I do have some, I don't know. Well, I don't think it's jealousy, but like I do wish the Midwest had even a fraction of the amount of events you folks on the East Coast have, which is really cool. And yeah, it's funny. I wasn't doing a lot of great business planning when I was evaluating the cost of doing my first tabling at Baltimore. But it was awesome because I did meet so many great people, and that is like especially when you it's one of the things that I think kept me wanting to table is because of the initial camaraderie aspect of
Yeah,
tabling.
yeah. It's funny, and y'all see other people that's, maybe they had a lot of nerves about doing a Comic Con and they weren't sure if they wanted to do it, and then when they first get there and they experience it for the first time, and you see that in their eyes. They're like, oh, I want to do this all the time now. It's just like it's that first high. It's almost like a drug. It really is. I even have a friend who he's not an artist, but he basically buys and sells Magic the Gathering cards. And he started doing these smaller cons in the area, and I think it's the first time that he had a similar experience where he went there and it was like instantly got along with everyone that he met and liked everyone, and he's surrounded by everything he loves, and they looked at me, he's like, I know why you do this now. So it's true for vendors too. I mean, it's just that camaraderie surrounded by and fueled by the things that everyone loves, and that's it. That's why anybody goes to any kind of convention.
Yeah, that is pretty darn powerful, and yeah, I mean there's a couple of local conventions where I have experienced that. So as far as the as well, but it's definitely not as robust as the amount of conventions on the East Coast, but or the West Coast or South.
Or anywhere but here.
Yeah, not that I'm complaining. But anyway,
point taken.
I don't know what it. Anyway, I definitely to push myself off to a different topic. Now, I'm thinking of a couple of aspects here where I assume there's almost like beyond the camaraderie, and as you're getting your to connect with your audience and whatnot too, like how has that sort of the sort of the conventioning and like again, like how many things that are on your schedule, or is it that I haven't like tracked your schedule year after year? Is it a matter where it's shifting because you're doing that exploration to find the sort of the sweet spot of the camaraderie and the sales aspect?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean every year I've tried to add in new shows, and like I said, I actually have the problem quotations of conflicts where there's two shows I want to do in the same weekend.
Oh my.
I know I'm going to make you depressed and curl into a ball and cry, but that is like that it ends up being an issue where you have to figure out which one do I really want to do. And there was a couple weekends ago was a show I signed up for called RetroCon. And it's like an 80s galore type show, and I think my stuff's kind of has that retro novelty feel to it because it's comic strips, and I did okay. Did okay. The show wasn't tremendous, but also that weekend was a Baltimore Book Festival, which I was really kicking myself because I really wanted to do a book festival. It's one thing I haven't done yet. And I also the same weekend was my local township has a big township day, and they have like a big craft fair. And
Hmm.
so a lot of people in my area, because I do, my library has a Comic Con for kids, which is freaking adorable. And so a lot of people in my area are starting to know me now and will come look for me and like, oh, I bought one of your Abby books, or I bought your ZNF book for my kid and they loved it and I want to buy the other ones too. And so you get a lot of those repeat customers that know you. Even at Halloween, people will be like, oh my God, you're the cartoonist girl, which is like, is awesome. So I want to do more stuff within my community. And that was the same weekend as RetroCon too. So that was one that took out two other shows I wanted to do.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you have that problem, but it's kind of like a BS problem because it's a good problem to have. Um,
Exactly. I have so many friends calling me.
exactly,
And,
yeah, that's what I sound like right now. I'm sorry. I'm so
I'm s- it's, thanks for being a good sport about that one. Yeah, but no, it's well, I mean, you have those kind of trade-offs all over the place as you're trying to do this. Like, where do you put your portfolio? What's your domain? What are you? Because there's things you're choosing and there's things you're not choosing, and you're, um, and yeah, there's just trade-offs galore. Which which tool? So wait about so now I'm curious as far as when when you're sort of building up your repertoire of how you get your comic done and the products and the books and whatnot, were you sort of like hunting for new tools or new skills that you were trying to um, uh, like how did that come up? Was it because you were um, seeing how others were doing it or like just curious? How did that work?
I think it became an as-needed basis type of thing.
Hmm.
So it was like, oh God, I'm going to have to learn how to do CSS to modify my website. Oh God, oh God. And I had a lot of helping hands. And this is part of the reason we started the Alliance, because we had a lot of helping hands. Mainly for me was Phil Hoffer, Frumpf. Everyone knows him as Frumpf. And he was a WordPress, Comic Press, CSS master, and he actually sat down with me on a Skype call or something and gave me the basics of CSS, and I learned a lot from that. And now I can do little things like altering code or whatever that I need to. I know what to look for in the mess of code that just looked
Hmm.
like a complete foreign language to me, and now I can look at that and go, okay, I think I know that this will fix it. And every once in a while, I'll still break my site, and I'll have to have poor Frumpf go fix it for me. But I mean, I wanted to pay back. I wanted to pay it forward. And so when I do the podcast and I do post articles and things like that, and someone just sends a message to me and says, "Thank you so much. Your article for talking about Comic Cons gave me the courage to go do one for the first time, and I had a blast. And I didn't think I could do it, and I did it." And now I want to do that one. So, and I love hearing that because I feel like I'm paying back what was given to me, and you know,
So yeah, that is honestly again like yet another uh, um, the, a huge like sort of service or another thing to dedicate to that like the Webcomics Alliance. I mean, as a um, it's almost like I imagine the story of the Webcomics Alliance. Everyone can go learn by going back and listening to the history of the podcast, right? Where probably kind of organically pick up how everyone came together and stuff, or do we need to do a special episode and invite you all on or something?
it would be fun to talk about because it's morphed over the years too. The only founding members left are me and Byron.
Mm.
When I'll give you a short synopsis of how it all started because the podcast doesn't really go over it in depth, I guess. You hear more of the evolution of our comics and how we think and what we do, through the podcast as opposed to the group itself. But it started my first convention because I'm crazy, and I would never suggest it to anybody else, was C2E2 in Chicago, which was number one, huge convention. Number two, I had to fly to it and ship all my crap and, stay in weird areas. I mean, like, I could have gone to anywhere near myself that would just drive to it, go to a small convention, and no,
Super
but I throw
ironic that
myself
you
in the fire.
come to the Midwest, and then I would go to the East Coast for our first conventions. It's kind
There
of.
you go, see?
I think you needed to balance the universe out or something. No.
Yeah,
Excellent.
exactly. Yeah, good point. But yes, I mean, that was when I got to meet a bunch of people that were all a part of this group called Webcomic Planet. And it was basically a collective, and it never really went anywhere. There was a lot of members, and we didn't really go anywhere with it. But, and when I would start doing cons, I would track down the people I knew from that group at Baltimore, and, when I did C2E2. But in talking with Byron and having an instant connection with him, with Kurt Sasso, with Antoine Gagnon and Ken Drab, that we all met through this, we kind of discussed we should do something where we basically post articles and have a podcast that details our journey through our successes and failures as webcomic artists, and share with other people, kind of like, here's where I messed up, don't do that. And here's what worked for me, maybe it'll work for you. And that was basically the purpose of it. It was kind of to be more open-ended and not like, look, we know everything, just listen to us and you'll have success. That's not how it works. And so we're kind of the antithesis to that that thought process of, here's step A, B, C, do all these and you'll find successes. It's a very open-ended process, and it's different for everybody, and that's the conclusion we come to over and over and over again. So, but Chicago was basically where we all met, and then a year later, actually this October, as in this month, is our 4-year anniversary. So I think it's 4.
Like
Maybe
one
it's
presidential
5 since we met. 5 since we've met. 4 since the site went up. How's that?
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. I mean, 4 years of a resource. That's really cool. Now I'm trying to remember how old Lead Into Art is. We're probably close in age. I think you guys are a year older, I'm guessing. Anyway, that's really cool. Yeah, it's similar ethos here, because of course, I mean, there really isn't one way to do this. And then of course it's not really good enough to just sort of drop that line and then walk away. It's time to then that's a chance to explore and say, well, I guess how did it work for you and what didn't work, and that is really cool. And it's been a while, but I did used to listen to that podcast, and it's a really cool format, how you guys have a panel and you ask questions, and it's almost like you'll kind of I don't know if it's cool to like counsel each other almost. And
sure, yeah. I mean, we basically do like a round table discussion, and sometimes we bicker, and like one person will say one thing, and it's like, no, I don't think that'll work. This will work, and we kind of just throw ideas out. And sometimes we solve problems, and sometimes we create more, but that's kind of life.
Yeah. So, let me think here. What there was a Oh yeah, well, thinking of some of those like really beneficial things that like lessons along the way and whatnot. So this is something where we're not kind of normally, if Jersey were here, we would have like a little stinger, and we'd be switching gears from talking about things up generally, and then getting to some on the ground things. But like I feel like we're naturally getting there, where there's like I'm really curious, like how, in particular, so there's like these stages of, well, I've done this for long enough where now I want to share what I'm learning, what I'm running into, and what have you, and then it's almost like that's become like another pretty major project, I would say, right? I mean, that's 4 years of work. You add up those hours and all the thought that went into. I mean, that's a ton of work, and all the articles you've done. How does that kind of fit in the realm of like, well, chances are if someone's doing a webcomic, or they fancy themselves they love a lot of things, they're a Jack or Jill of all trades. Is that kind of like a logical outcome where just someday you'll be podcasting?
It seems to be that way now. Yeah, a lot of people seem to be getting their own podcast and trying it out for themselves. And I think even though it seems like, okay, well, you're reaching out, basically what you're trying to do is help other people. I mean, the podcast, we have so much fun. It's really for ourselves too. I mean, we do discuss our own problems and help each other out, but we have such a close camaraderie now between the bunch of us, and it's like having pen pals that you actually get to talk to, and if you wanted to do video, to chat with, and you have these friends that kind of know you in a very specific way in terms of your artistic talent, and see that aspect of you. And a lot of times, most of us, we're very cartoonists, or very, private, and work by themselves, and very closed off, and in terms of all that. And it's usually hard to find another cartoonist friend that you can talk to about this stuff. You might find people that are like, oh, well, you do good work, yeah, okay, but you could babble at them all day and night about fonts, and they're not going to understand. Like what the perfect comic font is for your comic and all that. So it's good to be able to geek out with people that truly understand what you're talking about and can benefit from what you're talking about too, and not just stare at you blankly and wait for you to be done talking.
Exactly. Yeah, because I can identify with both sides of that. Getting pent up and excited to geek out, but then sometimes I save it up and it's for this podcast. Other times it can be an awkward conversation over lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's that geeking out aspect. It's so funny, and like it's almost like yes, this can be another product of that you're looking to engage in trade in, or it can sustain itself because it has so many other angles of the camaraderie and then the common experience where people are geeking out together. And what you totally reminded me of something like later this month, I'm probably going to take a day off, and Jersey's going to be here, right? And little inside baseball thing, but Jersey's like, oh, don't worry, Rob, take a day off or whatever. I'm like, why would I want to? I love doing this. And
I know, exactly. I'm missing a Webcomic Alliance podcast right now.
I know.
And they're talking about me.
That's funny. And and so it's obviously super cool of you to adjust your basically to be absent from your own podcast just to appear here. Where I don't know. I think.
Oh, well, no, I mean, obviously, I'd like to be on both if I could, but it's good to talk to you again, just in general, and it's good to do other podcasts once in a while. It's one of those things I used to do, and I just don't. One more thing I don't have time for that I'd like to be able to do more often. And but yeah, this has been fun. Like I very much enjoy it, and it's nice to talk to people outside of my little band of of idiots that I hang out with.
Excellent. I honestly, I'm looking forward to reconnecting with that show as well, and the and I think part of it too is for me I have gone on a more of a hiatus for my comicing aspects, and I'll do illustrations and what have you, but it's very it's very project based and one off, and so thinking of that for you, Don, like how do you keep your whole like how do you keep your comic going after so many years? What are some ways that you how do you manage and tackle that?
Well, it's funny that you brought up hiatus, because I'm actually on a hiatus right now, and it will be the longest hiatus I ever have taken. The comic's about 8 years old. Who the hell knows anymore? I feel like I've been born with the comic. It's just followed me throughout my entire life at this point. But for the first 6 years of the comic, I basically posted at least twice, usually 3 times a week for the entirety of the 6 years. I never took breaks. I just kept it going. And it started to just, like anybody else, it burns you out. It just, and you don't feel like you are putting forth your best content. And so what I started doing was seasons, just like a TV show would. So I would do 4 months on, 2 months off, twice a year. And I also took a new format to my comic in that before I would post every comic that I made. Well, I started doing seasons. What I started doing was I was actually drawing 3 comics a week, posting 2. And then last season was actually drawing 2, posting 1. And I would keep those other comics. I would not post them online, and I would release them in an ebook that you could buy for $3, and you would get those comics that weren't posted. So it's kind of like the whole business model of an app, where you can get the free app, try it out, see if you like it, and then when you're pestered with all the ads and you want to be able to unlock other things, that's when you can pay for the app. So I allow people to try out the comic, and then if they really want to know what happens in the storyline, they can get the ebook and see what happens. Or they can just wait for the printed volume to come out, which will have everything. So, I mean, this is just, again, another experiment, and every once in a while you have to try something new and see what works and what doesn't.
No, that's really cool. That's the that's the freemium model that they talk about. I mean, the thing is, but in order to accomplish that, that's a really awesome commitment where, in a way, like you're holding off on some of that satisfaction of getting your artwork, your trifecta of finishing. I took a lot of notes down and I can't find it, but basically finishing your finishing the artwork and getting people to read it. All of a sudden, that piece of the triangle isn't there, right? And so I think that'd be challenging. And a brave aspect of the strategy, and also like to be productive enough to have enough work to say, okay, some of this is the free part, and it's supporting. It's basically you're driving your own marketing campaign, keeping eyeballs on your stuff, and then having the product to be the conversion target of like, well, you're aware of this and you like it, you're here, and guess what? There's more, and you're only $3 away from it. That's.
And I've seen others do it a little bit better than I have, where what they'll do is at the beginning of the season they have to have a serious buffer for this. So at the beginning of the season they'll release an ebook. I believe it's Brad Geiger of Evil Inc. that does it. I think what he does is he releases the ebook so you can buy all the comics of that season immediately and read the entire thing, or you just wait and have them post one by one and read one by one by one. So if you don't want to sit there, if you want to be able to just read all the comics at once, you can just buy ahead of time. And I think that's probably a little bit more easy to grasp for people to understand that, and say, I just want to read all the comics right now. Here's some money, I'll buy them all right now. But it requires a whole lot of planning because you have to have the entire season all set to go in that ebook. So you really have to have a serious buffer.
No,
so that's a little tricky.
Wow. What? But you have. Let's see. So maybe, what's sort of like the biggest buffer you've been able to build up?
Usually about a month.
Whoa.
About a month. Yeah.
I never came close to that. So how did you like what would be some ways that you were able to? What did you find, like steps to get reduce your process? Did you spend more time? I mean, how did you pull that off?
I think it was I decided when I was going to do the 4 months on, 2 months off. The first time I did the 2 months off, I didn't actually take off. I started working on comics. I kept working on comics during that while the site was down, and then when it came back, I already had my buffer. And that's usually how I would work in those 4 on, 2 off. Is that a month before I would actually start posting, I would actually start working, and then I would be done with it a month before it ended. So I would still have 2 months off. They were just offset, but yeah, I mean, obviously I took some prep and realized that my site would have to be down, and a lot of this decision was based on an article that I posted on the Alliance that I think I called um, "Ditching the Webcomic Business Model." And this one was one that went all over the place, and it was linked by a lot of people, so it was probably one of my most popular articles from the site. And I basically, in looking at my demographic and who reads my comics and where I do well and what sells the most where, I realized that my audience is not looking for my type of comic online. And when I do a show, when I do a convention, I do so much better at a convention than if you went to my website. My website, you saw the traffic that I get. It's night and day in terms of the excitement that comes from people going to a convention, buying my books. They come back, and I get so many repeat customers that it tells you that this really hits home with these kids. If I can just access these kids or these adults, because they're adults that buy my books too, they're just not online looking for my type of comic or more comics at all. So in saying, you know what, my website does not matter other than just having somewhere to point people to once in a while, a lot of the stuff that comes with webcomics, like ads, website traffic, all this stuff does not matter anymore to me. I don't have ads on my site anymore because I don't earn enough traffic to make it worthwhile, so I have them, you know? And in doing that, it really is more about the books, it's more about the conventions, it's more about that. And the website just is just nice to have, you know, but it's not my focus is not the website anymore. So a lot of that has gone out the window in terms of, you know, what I'm thinking about, like, oh, well, I have to post at least 3 times a week, if not 5, if I want to be a valid webcomic. The stuff does not matter to me anymore. People that want to read, come read. It's fine. But what really matters is getting the books done, and you know, so and actually next year I'm going to cut back a lot on my convention schedule so I can get the next book done, because it does exhaust you.
Mm.
Not to mention get you sick half the time.
Yeah, cons are really amazing for that. Now, that article is really awesome, and I obviously will be linking to it in the show notes. And I looked at that and I thought this is the result of doing some amazing reflection on kind of an epic journey kind of thing. And what were like what was how did you go about that kind of reflection and analysis and whatnot?
Oh, I think it was just admitting to myself that, you know, Zorfbert and Fred just does not make a good webcomic in terms of a comic that lives online and people go to read it online.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, and in the article, you know, I said that, and it sounds like, oh, self-pity, wah wah, but that's not the way. Maybe at first that's how it felt. Like I wanted to like curl up in a ball. I'm like, I'm not good enough. I don't do this well enough. But I thought about the ways where it does really well, and I thought about conventions and selling my books and how excited not only the kids but the parents that buy for their kids get when they see my comic, and how much, you know, I will get emails from people after a con saying, you know, I bought the first volume for my son. He read it the entire hour drive home. He wouldn't put it down. He didn't even play with his toys that I bought him. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And it's just like, you know, this is stuff I don't get online. This is, you know, it's just, there's something about my type of comic, the tone of my comic and the humor that works so much better in book format than it does online. And I don't know, because there's plenty of web comics that are strips that are funny that are online that people like, but I think that a lot of webcomic readers are older and they're in that genre, that age demographic that does not like my comic. 20s to 30s in there, teens, do not read my comic. I'm at the bookends. I get 35 plus and 8 to 12. That's my demographic. It's really weird, but that's where it is. At a con, the people in between walk right by. I'm kid stuff. I'm lame ass kid stuff to them, you know, and that's fine. But you know, there's always exceptions, of course. But you know, and I just the people that I sell to and really like my comic are at a convention. So That's
And
where it all came together in terms of how I wrote that article, was realizing I do have a demographic. I do have passionate fans. I just don't know how to access them online, and I might not be able to. So,
uh, I know what you mean. That is using that kind of, I mean, sort of taking it all in, taking in all the different information and asking like, well, what might this mean? And that's I mean, that's a lot of times I end up thinking of that as evidence-based design, where you're thinking of like, well, what am I going to do next? And well, what do I know currently about what I'm working on? And like, I mean, recently it's not comics and whatnot, but I was on a project that was testing things on an iPad, and for a certain demographic, that's just not the device that they would be using, and yet they were this key audience for this thing. And so like wherever your audience is, um, there's there's going to be some kind of evidence that, and especially if you're trying different things, which is honestly um, sounds like you're able to get like channels of this information from, not just going to one convention once a year, from trying a lot of different ones and different types of ones. Um, and I'm guessing some of that insight came from um, just doing so many of those different things and looking at all your online stuff. Um, and is that fair to say? Like it came from everything?
yeah, I mean, basically, and we're hitting a point right now where Comic Cons are mainstream, which is really strange to say, but with all the Marvel movies coming out, with shows like Big Bang Theory being devoured by housewives, like, I mean, it's becoming a mainstream thing. Everyone wants to be a geek right now, and even if they're not actually going to a Comic Con because they haven't worked up the nerve yet, like I think 5 years ago, 6 years ago, if I started doing art festivals or something like that, where you usually see, crafty people that put out little crocheted, pillows and wind chimes and candles, and then you put me next to it, cartoonist girl, it would be it would be odd. It would be very strange, and I think, maybe half, maybe less nowadays, just kind of like don't know exactly what I am. They think I'm a bookseller.
Oh,
But when they
interesting.
find out, this is why I have to pitch differently at a craft fair, because they don't realize I'm actually the artist. I put up all these signs: meet the artist, meet the author, so they realize, oh, that's you. And I have to pitch differently to them. But when they realize that I actually wrote all the books and everything, um, it's a big difference. And I've seen a serious, over the past 2 years, I've seen a serious increase of sales of my comic books, as opposed to prints or even the Abby series. Comics are selling right now.
Hmm.
Parents with little girls, little boys who are, that preteen age, they are happy as hell to buy a comic book for their kid. And I think that's good. And I'm mainstream enough that I'm not too edgy or too old, or right for an older demographic that, the parents would be scared to buy for. I'm very safe. I think they can see that. So I think that's, I'm doing well in those types of venues because of that, because I'm so mainstream. Whereas at other shows that might be very indie, like SBX in DC, when I did that, I did not do well at it, because I'm too mainstream and people are looking for edgy and weird and unique and different, and I'm too I'm too arts festival for them. I guess you could say.
That's funny. So basically, maybe there's a tattoo metric, right? Would people show up with your characters as tattoos, or is that not? and so that's not your demographic, probably, right?
Right. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's definitely, like I said, you never hit a plateau. Everything just keeps changing between social media and how the conventions are changing right now, and and everything. It's an evolving process, and you have to just get used to that. And if you expect to just coast for a long while, you're going to be very mistaken.
and yeah, and honestly, just the coasting. and to not do it, there's there's plenty of information to pay attention to. Yeah, the page views and whatnot too, but like, finding somewhere to get out there and seeing people face to face. There's nothing like putting something you've made in someone's hands in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as long as it's, whatever, you don't have to be carnival barkering at them. You find someone
Right.
who's got that curious look, and you're like, well, feel free to, page through, check it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's amazing learning. Like, that's very obtainable. Even if you're in the Midwest, they're not as frequent, but like you still can get that kind of learning, and it's that's a really awesome awesome reminder, honestly. So what I think that really was pretty awesome, Don. Like there's just thinking about like obvious like we didn't even scratch the surface on like some of your other projects. I mean, I almost feel like it'd be worth like circling back, like you mentioned, Abby's Adventures. Again, is there anything else that, as far as like Abby's Adventures, like, is that sort of, and some of your illustration work and whatnot? Like, I'm curious, like, how these different pieces of the puzzle fit together, as far as just like, well, the Dawn Griffin Studios. It's like that's like the major.
That's the umbrella brand, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything falls under that.
Is the how do those different pieces come up, and like, are you like even right now thinking of like where there's, where's the next piece, where's the next, big project or what have you, or I guess I'm really interested in how you think about that, Don. Like, what?
You know what? I don't think about it enough. A lot of times, the projects that I do, that I get signed on to, are ones that kind of fall into my lap, and I don't take everything that is offered to me. I only take what I think would fit well into my brand.
Mm-hmm.
Or something that way I need to be able to expand into, or maybe I'm just a big fan about whatever I'm doing, and I'm like, this is great. I have to be involved in this. Like, for instance, there's I'm a Cleveland sports fan, and there's been an ongoing zine that's put together by fans for the Cavaliers, for the basketball team, and it's been going 5 years now, I think, and ever since the beginning. Because I'm associated with a very popular Cleveland blog, I do a lot of work for them, and I've been a commenter for a while. So through that, they knew that I was a cartoonist, and they said, "Do you want to do something for this Cavs zine?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." Now, this is not a paying job. This is just doing something fun for something that I'm a fan of. But now they just did a Kickstarter. Usually it was all put together as Xerox. Like, it was just like, it literally was a zine. But now they really want to go all out because LeBron is back, and, everything's really exciting right now for that team. And he put together a $5,000 Kickstarter that went well over that. And, I'm going to have 2 pieces in it. And, it's just something I love to do all the time. And you never know what leads to another thing. And being a part of that for so long, it's amazing, either through conventions or through one project leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. It's all connected, and the more things that you take on that will fit what you do well, it seems like, not all of them, but you might find something else through that, And now the kids book series, Abby, that was a long time ago. Started about the same time that ZNF started, so 2006. The writer knew my mom. Literally, this was a project found through my mother. But I read her scripts, and I was, at first I was like, oh, everybody wants me to draw their freaking kids book. But I read her scripts, and I was like, wow, this is really good, and I like the message, and I like the self-esteem aspect to it, and I just think that this is something girls need. You look on every bookshelf, and it's Barbie and the Bratz girls and just awfulness, just terrible things for little girls to grow up looking at as role models. And I just liked Abby, this little spunky girl being a role model for little girls, and she's not perfect and she makes mistakes, and I just thought, this is great. And so I said, you know what? Why not? This will work. And this is before I knew what my brand, like my Dawn Griffin Studios brand was, but it felt right, and it was just an instinctive type of thing. But so we have four books, and I think that's about it. I think the writer's done at this point. But
okay, and I think we finally do have all four now.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, recently we did order the Earth Day one. That's the one we were missing. But
okay, good.
but yeah, I highly recommend them. Yeah, I would say, yeah, boys or girls at home. They're great. They're great books for early childhood kinds of audiences. And yeah, really fun. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things that got my daughter fascinated with ballet, and actually noticing that my wife had some slippers hanging up, and noticing, and all of a sudden be like, oh, wait a minute, those are point shoes or what have you. And anyway, yeah. So, but really, I want to, not to like overly put a fine point on it, but like what I've heard so much, but by this talk with you, Dawn, is that it's like it seems like to me you have this sense of knowing what you like, and then it's that ends up guiding the kinds of projects you're gravitating toward, which sounds so okay. Maybe that sounds obvious or should be obvious, but like it just seems like you've got like this extra taste or sense of that, right? That I think is pretty awesome. And is there any other like how would as far as wrapping up the as we start to wrap up the show, like what would be that piece of advice to help maybe a starting out webcomic artist, how they develop that sense?
I think you just have to go with your gut. I mean, it's cliche, but just learn to be flexible. Learn your favorite things, like we talked about earlier, but be flexible at the same time. But if something seems really wrong and doesn't seem like you don't feel that excitement, that comes with it. I mean, most of the things that I wound up doing, I read the script or I read what it was going to be about, and I just lit up. And if I lit up and thought that was really cool, and I wanted to do it, I did it. I mean, sometimes there are paying gigs, and sometimes they weren't. Usually if they're paying gigs, I will try to find a way to do it, even if I'm not that excited about it. But when it comes, because a lot of us artists are approached like, oh, it'll be good for your portfolio, blah blah blah. But there are certain things that just transcend. Like the bullying thing that I'm doing right now, that I did. When I heard about that, I'm like, that's brilliant, and I want to be involved with that. I don't care if it doesn't pay. I don't, it's just something I need to be involved with. And then I happened to see the big names that were also involved. I'm like, okay, this is even more reason to be involved. And I have other secret news regarding that I can't divulge yet, but there's more to come about the bullying anthology. Anyway.
Awesome, exciting.
But yeah, I guess that's my best advice, is to go with your gut and to kind of just know yourself and know who you are as an artist, and take what comes if you really feel that inspiration to do it.
That's really cool. Honestly, it seems like it served you well, and I don't know, Dawn. This was awesome to have you to have you on. What is there as far as people continuing to follow up and keep in touch with your projects and whatnot? Well, where would you like them to go to tune in to?
I'm everywhere in terms of social media, but I guess the easiest thing, because most people have Twitter at this point, would to follow D Griff Studios.
Okay, cool. Of course, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. So yeah, follow follow Dawn on Twitter, and you actually are a ton of fun to follow on Twitter because I'm not like a super sports fan, but like I get actually kind of curious because of your excitement for for LeBron. I didn't know who LeBron was, but then I see
LeBron who?
yeah, and all of a sudden yeah, but there, plenty of mentions, and I'm like, okay, I'm curious, I'll look into it. But anyway, yeah, and obviously, you link to your project and comics and whatnot. Of course, that's where I found out about the bullying project as well. I recommend people checking that out. And yeah, excellent to follow Dawn on Twitter. And so before I close, I just want to say thank you again, Dawn, for taking part of this show.
Sure. No, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. And cool. Well, if you had that much fun, maybe we can figure out a way to have you back sometime, even though we conflict with your main schedule.
I love to. I mean, we might have one weekend or one Thursday where we're actually off because it's every other Thursday, but sometimes we have to do 2 in a row for some reason or whatever, and then we can reset. But,
okay.
Yeah, I'd love to be back.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, and as to the fine listeners out there, if you enjoyed this show and getting some awesome time listening to Dawn's adventures and advice, then by all means, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, or if you are interested in supporting the show in a more sustainable way, as we say, where we'd like to engage in a sustainable trade, head on over to the Lean Into Art Patreon, where you'll actually get extra content. I mean, there's another podcast we do called Extra Lean. That's there for free. There's also some content that only supporters or patrons are that have access to. The main thing being the we call it the open mic post, where every month we just open up a private conversation and chat about some things that are a lot like we chat about on the show, and things that we're just sort of curious about as we're going about our creative projects. And then other ways to support the show, you can check us out on iTunes, give us a star rating or a review, or just the good old-fashioned sharing the link. Any of it's appreciated, and thank you for all the support and all the awesome recent updates on the iTunes feed and whatnot too. Super kind of you folks for doing that. And again, thank you, Dawn. Everyone can follow up with Dawn as dgriff on Twitter, or it's dgriff Studios.
Yeah, dgriff Studios, 2 Fs.
Yeah, dgriff Studios. Cool. And I have been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Twitter. As Jersey would say, okay, bye. All right. So obviously, after post, we'll put in the stuff that normally Jersey would do, and doodly do, and there's a logo and what have you.
Things flying all over the place.
Yeah, not too much animation, but I'm adding the animation effects. I'm rendering it really slowly. So yeah. Anyway, I'm about to cut off the stream. Thank you, everyone, for who is watching. It's really cool. I saw we had a bunch of viewers the whole time, but and I will follow up with questions afterward if I see any on the Google Plus page or the YouTube post. So thank you again, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
And I'm